Hello everyone and welcome back to the Scale Shop. I told you all at the beginning of the year that I wanted to do some more diorama building in 2026, so here's your first look at what I've been working on recently. I've got a really cool update for you all today. As always, I've got some newly designed and 3D printed accessories to add, continuing to fill this display with more detail and help improve the overall lifelike appearance. I've also got a couple of handmade items to add as well, including this bottle of Fast Orange hand soap. We got a ton of likes over on our social media pages posting some pictures of this item, so that was pretty cool, even if a bit unexpected. As many of you know, this shop has been a work in progress for quite a number of years now. I've been coming over to this display every so often, adding more and more accessories, with the shop looking better and better with each update. I'm going for sort of a high-end race shop or restoration shop look with this display, and so far I've been really happy with how it's turning out, but especially after today's updates, I think the appearance and detail has really been taken up a notch. But without any further introductions, let's go ahead and dive into some of the work that I've done over these past few weeks. What you're seeing now is how the shop looked after my previous update video from last year. I do have a playlist with all of the videos featuring the Scale Shop, which I'll be linking below in the description if you'd like to check out any of the previous updates. Little by little, I've been adding more and more items to the shop, and of course it's been a great place to display some of my 1/24th and 1/25th scale RC models. Also a great place to put a bunch of junk that doesn't really belong here, so if nothing else, working on this diorama is a great opportunity to clean this area up a bit and put all my tools away. You will see a few store-bought items here and there, which I've accumulated over time, but the vast majority of items in this diorama are custom made by me, either being handmade or digitally designed and then 3D printed. And it's not like I'm necessarily going for perfection here or anything like that, just having a lot of fun with it. I think the fact that just about everything in here is custom made makes this project a little more special to me. There's no shortage of great store-bought accessories out there, but I think it's always cool when you can do stuff yourself. And again, I'm just having fun with it, piecing it together here and there, and so far I'd say it's looking pretty good. Really what my focus has been at this stage is adding more subtle details to some of these areas, such as this spot here around the sink. I added the sink to the Scale Shop quite a while ago. Which part of this series that was, I have no idea, but I think it was quite a few years ago at this point. Of course, that was a custom designed and 3D printed item, which I modeled after a real-world sink. I went ahead and placed it here between a pedestrian door on the left, which I sort of envisioned would lead into either an office area or maybe a showroom, basically an area where customers would be, with this door of course leading into the main shop area. And then on the right, there's an overhead door which would lead into a separate area of this facility dedicated to paint and bodywork. We can just imagine that the Scale Shop continues in this direction for any amount of length that we think would make sense. I've only got so much bench space to work with here. I could probably add some more detail up here, but there is a walkway which overlooks the shop. There's some offices on the left and a window overlooking the body shop here on the right, and I imagine this door here would lead to a stairwell. Honestly, I'm all just kind of making this up as I go, but I thought I'd devote this little area here to having a sink for hand washing. Obviously, there would be restrooms somewhere in this building, or at least I would hope so, but I suppose this would be a convenient spot to clean all of the grease off your hands before going into the offices or delivering the keys to the customer who owns that $250,000 Shelby GT350. But as it currently stands, I thought this area was looking a little plain, so I got started by adding some yellow lines around this area. I mean, it seems sort of obvious that you shouldn't drive here and should keep this area clear, but you see lines and stuff like this all the time in shops, factories, and warehouses. I don't know if this is actually mandated or regulated, but if nothing else, it's something to break up this gray concrete floor. All I'm using is some yellow tape, which is around 4mm in width, and I guess is intended for use on cars. Obviously very easy to apply and sticks well to the floor. I worked on a couple of accessories earlier off camera, and that's what you're seeing here. I cut a small piece of yellow foam that I thought would look like a safety mat to put at the base of the sink. I went around the outer perimeter with a black Sharpie to help make it look more like a mat, and I also used a black pastel to add a bit of dirt and grime to it, and finally splashed on some super glue to make certain parts of it look wet, as you would expect being close to a sink. Very simple, basically just turning trash into diorama accessories. And then all I did to make this bottle of Fast Orange was cut a small piece of styrene and basically just whittle it down until it was roughly the shape of a soap bottle. Being this size is kind of annoying because, well, it's so small, but on the positive side, it's not like I really had to make it that accurate since you'll only be able to see so much detail. I just did the best I could with it. I believe it was in the previous installment in the Scale Shop series that I designed and 3D printed this floor standing drill press. You see this little handle here on the side to adjust the platform? Well, that turned out to be a pretty good piece to place on top to act as the dispenser. And then after all that was glued together, it's just a matter of painting everything and 2D printing this little sticker to go on the front. Very simple, but it turned out looking great. I thought about making a soap dispenser that would be placed on the wall, sort of like this. That would maybe make a little more sense in this context and perhaps be the classier option. However, the reason I went with this bottle of Fast Orange is I thought in 1/24 scale, having a soap dispenser, which would essentially be more or less a black box on the wall, might not be instantly recognizable as a soap dispenser. However, this Fast Orange bottle is instantly recognizable as, well, a bottle of Fast Orange. That was just sort of my thinking when I decided to go with this particular option. But while those two items were handmade, I used 3D printers to create the next two items. The first being a paper towel dispenser, which will make sense to have right next to the sink. Obviously, this is once again an object that's in 1/24 scale and is going to be placed towards the back of this diorama, so I wasn't exactly sweating the details when it came to modeling this item. That said though, I think there's enough detail here to where you'll know exactly what this object is at first glance. I went ahead and sent that to the 3D printer, and then I also modeled a 30-gallon drum to be used for trash cans. I have some 55-gallon drums in the shop, but those seemed a little large to be used for trash cans. I'm sure some people do, but I feel like something more like a 30-gallon is a little bit more manageable and would fit better into the space. I FDM 3D printed the trash cans, but used high detail resin for the paper towel dispenser. That way more of the finer details would be captured. I removed the supports and did any post-print finishing work. I figured with it being printed in black resin, painting the whole thing wasn't necessary, but I did add a little bit of detail to a few spots. I cut a piece of a coffee filter to look like a paper towel sticking out, and here's a look at the finished product. I'm definitely happy with how that turned out. Very simple to design, but it really helps add some more detail to this area. And of course at this point, I went ahead and glued the Fast Orange bottle to the sink. Already this area is looking a lot better with these additional details. Next I worked on the trash cans. They looked great right off the printer, so I went ahead and applied the paint. I printed these using black PLA, and I intentionally made the paint sort of uneven and let some of that black show through underneath. As I don't want these trash cans to look pristine, I want them to look a bit used and have some scratches and other imperfections. No worries about a perfect paint job here. Naturally, I wanted there to be some trash in a couple of these cans, so I started out by digging out some old milliput that I had on hand. This milliput is some great stuff that can be used for a lot of different hobby-related projects, but this particular box that I have here is quite old, but even if it never completely hardens, I don't care. I just wanted something to fill up the bottom of the trash cans, and then I'll place the trash towards the top. I literally just threw in a bunch of random junk, including some little pieces of cardboard, nothing fancy. For the trash can, which is going to sit by the sink, I crumpled up a bunch of little pieces of that coffee filter to look like paper towels that have been thrown away. Very, very simple, and the final thing I did was add a few dents to some spots simply by heating up that PLA and creating some dents and scratches, again just to make them look used. And just like that, I had a nice set of trash cans that I could place around the shop, or maybe some not so nice looking trash cans. I used water to help keep those little pieces of paper towel scrunched up and compacted, and this trash can I think looks even better after that water dried. You'd expect to see a bunch of paper towels in a trash can right by the sink, so that's exactly what I have here. Just those few simple details is really helping to add some more interest to the specific part of the shop. No longer is the sink just standing there alone, so I decided to move on to creating some more items that I wanted to add throughout the shop, these items including some air hose reels. Pneumatic tools would be commonly used in a shop like this, so having some air hoses placed around is going to make a lot of sense. As always, I did a bit of research and looked at some real-world photos for inspiration. I started out by gathering some reference images and some real-world dimensions, which I scaled down to be roughly 1/24th scale. Using Autodesk Fusion, I modeled my own version, simplifying the design and thickening certain parts where necessary. This here is what I ended up with, and I once again sent it over to my 3D printer. While those parts were printing, I decided to go ahead and fix this little defect in the stripe that goes along the wall. That stripe is not painted, I just used some electrical tape, which has shrunk a bit over time, so I just kind of got tired of looking at that little imperfection there in the corner, so I went ahead and cut a piece of tape to fill the gap. Once again, high-resolution SLA 3D printing using resin was used to create these air hose reels. I did damage one of them accidentally, but figured it wasn't bad enough to where it would need to be reprinted, I would just hide it on the finished model. But I carefully removed all of the supports, did any necessary trimming and sanding, and then took them over to the booth to be painted. Once again, I wasn't at all concerned with complete coverage or having the paint be perfect. I want some of the black to show through and have these reels look a bit used and show some wear. For the air hose itself, I simply used electrical wire, specifically 24 AWG, which is probably a little large to be correct for the scale, but it's what I had, so it's what I used. I realized that I should have made a hole in the center of these reels for the hose to go into to make it a lot easier to wrap around. I have since corrected that, but here I just used some super glue to hold the one end in place while I wrapped it around and installed the reel into the holder using M2x5mm screws. So far so good. I only placed a screw on the one end as I want to leave the other side open for the supply air hose to go into, similar to what you'd see on the real thing. I used a black and silver Sharpie to add some final details, and I also used an M2 nut to replicate the stopper, which would prevent the hose from retracting too far inside. For such simple models to make, they really turned out looking nice. Now earlier I had been doing some thinking, and something I wanted to try and address was the somewhat unsightly appearance of this LED strip which runs along the back wall. I like the light that it provides, but I wanted to see if I could at least sort of cover up the strip, at least to some degree, while not completely blocking out the light. I thought that creating some sort of support structure like this would help accomplish that goal. It doesn't completely cover it up, which isn't really the intention here, but it kind of helps hide the not-so-scale appearance of those lights. I simply took a few measurements, once again hopped on to Autodesk Fusion, and after the 3D printing was complete, this here is what I ended up with. The reason for splitting these up into so many pieces is because the print bed on my 3D printer is only so large, but not really a big deal. I just have to be careful to line everything up the best I can when installing in the shop. These support pieces alone will help hide that light strip, but to further improve the appearance, I cut some pieces of transparent plastic, which can be glued to the backside. I'll keep that protective film in place that these clear plastic sheets come with, which will help obscure the view slightly, but still allow the light to pass through. I cut out all the remaining pieces while letting the black paint that I applied earlier to the support pieces dry. Once that paint was dry, I could then glue these clear plastic pieces into place, before adding all of the support pieces into the shop. A very simple addition, but what a difference these pieces make to the overall appearance. I'm really glad I went ahead and added this here, an improvement for sure. I created a few more pieces that will get glued to the underside of this walkway. Earlier, I spent some time figuring out where I wanted to place each of these air hose reels. I figured one towards the top of each of those 2-post lifts would look good, but the air needs to get over there somehow. Shops may have pipes for compressed air running under the floor, along the walls, or coming down from the ceiling. But with the ceiling being so high up in this part of the shop, I figured it might look better to have some supports extending out for the air lines to be attached to, which will supply air to each one of the reels. So once all of these parts were painted, as you can see here, I got everything glued into place and once again ran some more of that wire from each of the reels to the support piece. Again, just a nice bit of extra detail, and I'm really happy with how these air hoses turned out. I may even add a few more of these reels along the wall and in some other spots, but they definitely look good on each one of these 2-post lifts. Like I said before, the scale shop keeps looking better and better with each update, and I'm really happy with where it's at right now, and this here is how it looks at the time of posting this video. This is just a fun, relaxing project that I can work on at any time, and I always enjoy creating these additional items to go inside and see how it adds to the overall look. Of course, I've got some more ideas for additional items I'd like to add, which I'll be sure to showcase in a future video. For now though, I'm going to really enjoy getting some great shots of my RC vehicles in here. STL files for all of these parts that I've 3D printed are available on our Patreon, which I'll have linked below in the description. That's in addition to the many other items that we have over there, such as these 2-post lifts, as well as the oil drain pan and floor standing drill press that were featured in the previous Scale Shop video. We also have a selection of Scale Shop kits and accessories available on our website if you don't want to have to 3D print these items yourself. That link will be below in the description as well. I really hope you all enjoyed today's update, as I certainly enjoyed making it. Huge thanks as always to all of you for watching, and especially to all of our Patreon and channel members, which help make these videos possible. I'm blown away by the amount of support we've received recently, and there's more great videos on the way, so I hope you'll stay tuned for more. For now though, that's going to be all for today's video. Thanks again everyone for watching, and I'll see you next time.